Welcome into Art of the Call, where we spotlight some of the best broadcast calls in Gators history, and we're bringing in some broadcasters who have known and lived these calls. We welcome in Kyle Crooks. Kyle, it's great to have you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. You know, I'm a broadcast nerd, so I love the opportunity to talk about some of the great calls in Gator history.
100%. I'm Ethan.eibe, by the way. Good to meet you all. This is meant to be an educational series for future Gator broadcasters and whoever might stumble upon this on YouTube 5-10 years from now as we relive some of the great Gator moments in history, some with a bit of recency bias, but want to start things off with kind of your perspective on your time as a Florida Gators broadcaster to this point. These calls that we're going to go over today, they're simply the icing on the cake when it comes to what is a full broadcast, layers of storytelling. For you, what are the things that make the perfect call that people will remember for a long time?
Yeah, it's punctuating the moment. There's a lot of games, and whether it's innings or quarters, no matter the sport, where there might not be a whole lot going on. Every once in a while you get lucky enough to have the opportunity to call a really big moment. It's about highlighting the moment, making sure that you're doing justice for the athlete, for the situation. Mm-hmm. You know, my first 2 years here as the softball announcer at Florida, we had walk-offs in Game 3 of a Super Regional to go to a World Series. Yeah. So you want to talk about the ultimate punctuation to nearing the end of a broadcast season. I'd had that my first 2 years. But it's about having the right amount of energy, thinking of the right words. It's not a scripted thing. You know, sports anchoring and certain aspects of this business are scripted. But play-by-play, that is the ultimate, just once you see that red light, you got to go. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about it, the rush of being able to come through in a moment, or just like an athlete, you either thrive in that moment or you don't. And that's all beauty's in the eye of the beholder. It's all a subjective thing when it comes to broadcasting. But I love that aspect of whatever words you thought of at that particular moment, the energy that you had in that particular moment, that lives on for years when you go back and eventually listen to some of these calls.
Who are some broadcasters that you feel always hit their marks, always meet the moment when the time calls?
Yeah, my favorite all time, especially on television, he had the call of the recent men's basketball national championship on television, Ian Eagle.
Yeah.
One of my all-time favorites. I grew up in New Jersey, so he's the longtime television voice of the Nets, formerly New Jersey Nets, yep. Now the Brooklyn Nets. And I've always thought that he was the greatest at punctuating a moment, and he certainly did that with the national championship. A voice like Kevin Harlan, who I listened to for years, even on the radio side, doing Monday Night Football. His energy is infectious. His love of the job is infectious. Two guys that I've had a chance to get to know throughout the years through mentorship, and it's just incredible. Kevin Burkhardt, who's a mentor of mine, we both went to the same small college in William Patterson.
Oh, really?
Give them a shout out. He spoke at my graduation, which was incredible, and he's now the lead voice for the NFL on Fox. He got a chance to call a couple of Super Bowls, and I feel an immense amount of pride for a guy like that who fought through the business, the tough aspects of the business. And I think Joe Davis and Adam Amin are two young announcers, youngish. They just feel like they've been around a long time because they've been so successful at such a young age. They both work for Fox, and Joe Davis calls the World Series, and Adam Amin, somebody who calls the NFL and the MLB. Those are two guys that I look up to, and just energy, presence, storytelling. All those guys I named, they all have that, and they can all punctuate that big moment.
Those are the 1% moments, the ones that get remembered for a long time, but it takes a while, of course, to build up to those moments when it comes to layering the storytelling over the course of an entire game. If you could talk about that, it's great to punctuate the moment, but it's everything that leads up to it more so.
Yeah, it takes a lot of preparation to make sure that you're ready for a 2-3 hour broadcast, dependent on the sporting event. There's more time in certain sports to get into the storytelling aspect of broadcasting. Baseball is a much different sport in terms of the technicalities of calling it, as opposed to football and basketball. You even have more time in football than you do in basketball. There's not a whole lot of, specifically on radio, there's not a whole lot of storytelling that you get a chance to get into when it comes to basketball. Baseball is what we call a rocking chair rhythm, where it allows you to sit back and sort of with the flow of the game, tell stories. Although it's a little bit faster now with the invent of the pitch clock, and I call a lot of softball too, gives you some opportunity to have some storytelling. It's a little bit faster paced than even baseball is, but that's where the hours and hours of preparation comes in, Ethan. You want to be able to punctuate the moment and call the technical aspect of play-by-play, but how do you weave in stories through a pitch or through free throws? That's where as you get more reps, you learn to be a little bit better at. Getting a chance, I've learned the most important aspect of preparation for games is talking to the coaches and the players. You can do as many Google searches as you want. You can, have all these bio notes, but the most important thing is talking to them, their firsthand experience, getting context to certain things. And I've learned, my storytelling has improved as I've learned to communicate a little bit more with the athletes and the coaches and get their firsthand experience. You can tell a story, but if you don't have a quote or something along the lines from a firsthand source, then it sort of waters down what you're doing. So I've learned that's such a huge aspect of the storytelling part is being a little bit more personal, talking to the coaches and the players specifically.
Absolutely. Now, what made you first fall in love with broadcasting? Was it around high school? When did this really take hold for you?
Yeah, I want to say as a kid, I probably always wanted to be the shortstop for the Yankees. Derek Jeter was born in the same small town that I grew up in New Jersey, Pequannock, and that was our claim to fame. But when I realized I love sports, I love playing sports, I love Little League, I played some golf too, I haven't played ever since, but played a lot of basketball. We were a football family. My dad was a coach, my brothers were coaches, we all played in high school. So that was, our family dynamic was built around college football Saturdays and NFL Sundays for so many years. So, and the way you think of it, how do I stay involved in this? How do I make a living out of this? And from a very young age, probably, it's hard for me to remember the exact age that it sort of clicked for me. Maybe it was 9, 10 years old, somewhere around elementary school. I would memorize random facts, like where this guy went to college. Like I mentioned, I was a Nets fan and watching Iron Eagle. I would memorize what college every single New Jersey Net went to. This useless knowledge. But it was something that it kind of grew over time, and everybody would refer to me in elementary school and high school as this sports encyclopedia because I would have these weird facts and things. And then over time I realized, I wasn't tall enough to be an NBA player. I wasn't good enough to play in Major League Baseball.
The voice got deeper?
The voice got deeper, learned, and I grew up, like I said, I grew up from a young age watching Iron Eagle and Bill Raftery, who did the Nets games back when, and I always had an affinity for that aspect of sports. So over time, when I got to really college, I started out at junior college before I went to a 4-year university. I would do a sports talk show talking to nobody. I grew up listening to a lot of sports talk radio in New York, specifically Mike and the Mad Dog, and I would say that's where I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, watching them they were at a show that was 5.5 hours long, and I would watch them for pretty much all 5.5 hours, and that's where I think I knew that I wanted to get into sports broadcasting. At first it was sports talk. I would do that talk show at community college, and then I realized, what? I probably don't know as much as certain fans. Play-by-play, I feel like for me it was always something I wanted to do. And when I transferred over to a 4-year university, that's when that really took off.
Wow. Now, going back to us talking about the storytelling aspect in sports, what do you think makes sports specifically such a proving ground for the ability to tell cool stories that you just can't get anywhere else? What is it about sports that allows us to do this the way that we do it?
Yeah, just different backgrounds, different ways of life. I mean, you go to any different team, it's just a melting pot of personalities. Having a chance to be around many athletic teams here at the University of Florida and other levels prior, it's just, there's so many different ways that people got to where they are, specifically to be a Florida Gator. I mean, there's so many stories of elite athletic achievement. I mean, you don't become a Florida Gator unless you're a Florida Player of the Year, or you're a State Player of the Year at another place, or a National Player of the Year. these are the cream of the crop. So when you get to a place like Florida, it's so much easier to tell stories because you get a chance to be around incredible athletes. You're talking about Olympians, first-class athletes and first-class people. And then when you travel around with them, you realize that they're much more than their sport. You know, they're tremendous students, or they're entrepreneurs, and the way that college athletics is now, they're running their own businesses, or they have their own NIL engagement. And so there's so much around the game now that's just outside of the athlete part of it. There's the student, there's the person, and then you realize that the other two, the student and person, you get to learn that a little bit more as you travel with them. And what's nice in my gig is you just get to be around them all the time, and they get to know you too and what you do. And I think that's pretty special. Just a lot of elite stories, especially on this campus.
Yeah, 100%. We've seen that just over the course of this year for sure. For you, your time at Florida, I believe this is your 8th year calling games for the Gators. How have you seen yourself grow within that role as you've covered these teams?
Yeah, it's just, my voice has gotten deeper over time. I've just matured. I was doing Division II basketball, Division III football. I was doing all the things to sort of make it work. And when I finally got this job, it was just incredible to be around everything that comes along with a big brand like the Florida Gators. I couldn't believe that I was here and doing it and getting a chance to kind of do a full-time gig in what I love. So for me, yeah, this is 8 years. It moves really quick. Got here as a young 25 years old, I guess, youngish. My first year, I got a chance to, my main gig here is I do women's basketball, softball, soccer, and fill in on other sports, but I got a chance to fill in for Mick Hubert in my first year. My first ever game was Florida-Auburn. It was a sold-out O-Dome. It was a 9 o'clock tip. I'll never forget it, and was scared out of my mind. And I was working with, at the time, Mark Wise, who was previous the analyst for the Gator Sports Network, now works for the SEC Network, and our engineer, Steve Egan. And, they were trying to calm me down in the beginning. I'm filling in for the legend, Mick Hubert, and, sold-out building. I was doing Division II basketball a year prior, but just being here has allowed me to improve as a broadcaster, put myself in situations that terrify you. I never done television before I got here either. I would say it's about a half and half split now. I do half television on SEC Network Plus and half radio. So I've had a chance to host and MC and do all these different aspects that come along with being the voice of a program or the voice of a school. And you learn so much about yourself, putting yourself in what you once thought were terrifying situations, and now you think that you thrive in them, and you look forward to them. That just comes with 8 years of the ups and downs of learning what you can do and what you can't do, and then improving on the things you can't do.
Yeah, obviously you have the face for TV, but do you like TV or radio more? What do you think?
It's evened out throughout the years. I love radio. Yeah. Grew up on it, like I mentioned. Listened to Kevin Harlan growing up on Monday Night Football, and grew up just having one of those old Radio Shack radios, and having the headphones in and listening to all the games while watching them. And that's never changed. I still listen to games while I watch them. I just love the craft of radio. You'll learn as you go that television pays a little bit more over time. But I love, because in television, it's more of a team aspect. You have a director, a producer, graphics, all these different camera people. You have 8 different cameras on a broadcast. You have to work in tandem with what they're showing on the screen. As opposed to radio, you are the director, the producer. You're the eyes and the ears of the listener. So it's a lot different in radio, that you are sort of the only show, while television, you're such a small part of what actually happens. I love both. I'd probably still give the edge to radio, just because I love the craft aspect of it. But the storytelling ability that you have on television, there's a little bit more space because people can see what's going on. I've grown an affinity more for television over time in these 7 or so years that I've done it.
Nice. Well, we're going to look at 2 radio and 2 TV calls here over the next couple of minutes. Warning, some of them are yours, of course, but we're going to start with the legend that you alluded to, Mick Hubert. And we're going to go back to 2017, the legendary Florida-Tennessee matchup where Felipe Franks threw an unbelievable bomb down the field to Tyree Cleveland. It was Florida at their own 37 with 9 seconds to go. Let's listen back to it.
So now here we are, 9 seconds left. Gators first down, 37-yard line, left hash. Snap to Franks. Franks dropping back, stepping up, running the ball, looking. He's going to heave one deep down the field. It's going to be to the goal line. It's going to be caught. It's a touchdown, and the Gators have won the game. Tyree Cleveland. Oh my! I can't believe what I just saw. The Gators have won the ball game on a bomb thrown by Felipe Franks, and this place is an insane asylum again. Oh my! Ball game. Gators have beaten Tennessee again.
That's the emotion of the hometown announcer, right? But the details in the beginning, the ball's on the left hash, and Franks eludes the pocket, kind of runs with the ball, and then launches it down the field. And you can, if you watch that play, you can notice right away that Tyree Cleveland has that separation. Yeah. Sometimes when, especially in the positions that we're up a little bit as broadcasters, you can see the entire field. So you can see the separation from Tyree Cleveland, and you know right away as a broadcaster, when you see that separation, your energy amps up a little bit more because you have anticipation now for what's going to happen. And that's exactly, Mick had all the legendary lines in there, the oh my that he made popular around here.
The insane asylum.
Insane asylum, and the Gators had, and still sort of do have, just such an incredible stranglehold on the all-time series against Tennessee. And throwing that in there, as the hometown announcer, you probably don't do that from a national perspective, the way that he punctuated and the Gators beat Tennessee again. Mm-hmm. As a Gator fan in his audience, that makes you smile. And I remember I was on a plane when that happened, and I didn't see it until they posted it on Twitter after the fact.
Oh, no.
And to see how the Gators won that game, and Felipe Franks, who had such a strong arm, and to see the players run out, and then you have Lee McGriff, who also you could hear sort of giggle in the background as the analyst on the Gators Sports Network. Just tremendous energy, but that's what we came to know about Mick Hubert for sure.
Now, obviously, the description's incredible. That's always been one of his amazing things that he can do. But it's, for me, the voice is instrument, right? It's the buildup of how high his voice is getting, and it just climaxes with the catch.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about the incredible control that it takes to get there, and knowing the depths of your voice, the range of your voice, to be able to reach that moment at that exact time. That takes decades of work.
Yeah, it does. And you want to make sure that you're not screaming. If you think of it on a scale of 1 to 10, you want to live for most of the game at a 4-ish, and then big plays you want to hop up to maybe an 8. You never really want to be at a 10. Because 10, you're talking about breaking the audio, and the audio crackles, and you're sort of screaming, and you don't necessarily want that. It was a good balance of energy without screaming, punctuating the moment. Like that's a forever living within the 90,000 people of the swamp. Like Mick puts you in that moment for sure.
100%. Yeah. Now, the next man who puts Gator fans in the moment these days, at least on the men's basketball scale, is Sean Kelly, of course, the current voice of the Gators. And he just got to call a national championship. Incredible. This was, just a couple of weeks ago now. Florida defeating Houston in the Alamo Dome. The last minute of that call was probably some of Sean's greatest work, I think, just from a description standpoint. So let's go ahead and take a look.
Now hand it back to Cryer. Cryer will bring it up the center of the floor. Pauses, keeps the dribble alive. Cryer with 12. Cryer shoves it to Uzan on the right wing. Uzan picks up his dribble, pivots. Back it out to Cryer, front court right. 5 seconds left. To Sharp. Sharp spiked the ball, he can't touch it. Condon dives the neck. Grabs it, that's it! That's it! Chop this one up for the Gators! Chop a national championship for Florida! The orange and blue dream is real for the first time in 18 years. Florida will cut down the nets. Winners in the national championship. 65-63 is the final. Gators pile and celebrate their third national championship in school history.
Outstanding description. It's hard in those moments to focus in on the job at hand because you know what's at stake, right? It's a national championship. This is what, even for Sean, who's accomplished so much in his career, this is something he had never had the chance to do before. That's one, call a Final Four, call a national championship. So for somebody who's been around the block, this was a first for him in his entire career. And to pinpoint the details as if it was any possession in the game, front court right, shoves it right wing, and mentioning the up and down where the player couldn't touch the ball because he had already gone up with the ball and the ball's loose, and Condon diving on the deck, and then to get into the punctuation of what we used to have championship DVDs. We don't do that anymore, but that final call of his line, chomp this one up for the Gators, national championship. And I love at the end of it, him mentioning the details of what's happening in that moment. They're piling on the court, confetti falling from the corners of the Alamo Dome. Mm-hmm. That's the aspect of the call. You nailed it, the call. You get in that final aspect of it. But after that, bring people inside the arena. And that's exactly what Sean does with the confetti and the celebration. Good for him. He's a friend, and I'm really happy for him to get a chance to have that moment and not just have it, but nail it. So I'm incredibly happy for Sean. He had that moment for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned the confetti. That was my favorite part of the call as well. Yes, he nailed the moment, but it is everything after that. It's the atmosphere. It's the insanity of that moment. But also, I was astounded by his control in that moment. Obviously he's been around the block, but it takes a certain self-control there to not get overly excited. This is one of the hallmark moments in Gators sports history, and he didn't let that moment get to him, and I think that's special.
Yeah, and I think that comes with experience for him, having done big games in the NBA and big college games prior to ESPN Radio. I think you need the experience to learn how to restrain yourself and do that, and he did that really well. To be able to be in the moment, realize that there's people that may still not be watching the game, and you're the only source of how they are taking in the game, that you still need to be under control, and you're always in command. You never want to lose command of your voice or the situation, and that comes with experience over time. No matter how big the moment gets, you're still in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm. What is your stance on catchphrases, just kind of as a whole? Obviously, Sean's is becoming more iconic as he grows with the role, and he's told me that it kind of came naturally to him. Chomp this one up for the Gators. But what's your stance on catchphrases as a whole?
Yeah, if it's something, especially specifically for home announcers, I think it's something that is more than okay to have. If it's unique to you, and it's something that reminds people of you and your final call, and it's specific to your broadcast, you want to be unique, and you want to have that unique call. I don't have any issue with having that, as long as it comes naturally, and for Sean it came naturally to him, and over time you just want to find the right turn of phrase or whatever that may be, and it may never come for you where it just doesn't feel natural over time. So luckily for Sean, he found one that felt good for him, and I like something that's unique to a home team broadcast, because that's what it's all about. You want to be unique and special and Gator specific, and that's what we had Mick for many years, who had a handful of his phrases that people associated with Mick Hubert, and I think that's good.
Now, you've had your moments as well. We've curated a couple of calls that have been some staples of your time here at Florida. Of course, there's many, but a couple of them include Jariah Warren's recent buzzer beater this past season over Mississippi State. Obviously, women's basketball had a pretty decent year after it was all said and done, with a nice deep postseason run. But Warren, a senior, who, with the game tied at 66, that last possession, wound up nailing this call.
In for Reynolds. Final 5 seconds. Reynolds for Niseko. Warren for the win. Rolled in on the buzzer.
And just like that, your senior wins it for you at the top of the key. Gators go crazy.
Now, that was a TV call too, by the way. So it was a little less in terms of the description. And on the TV side, it's more about captioning the moment. So for me, try to make fairly minimal the amount of words that you're saying, and you want to have a crescendo for that moment. For me, luckily, when I said for the win, it clanked off the rim first and it allowed those extra seconds to tick off. So that was, I think, a good aspect of it to punctuate the final call for the win. I try to build with enough energy. I think the energy matched the moment. There's certain aspects in everything I do that I would change, do a little bit differently, but I just wanted to make sure that the energy was right and you punctuate the moment and then have those few seconds of silence afterwards. Again, television, you want to let the pictures do the talking, and at that point, everybody had rushed off the bench and were sprinting on the floor and hugging a senior who's playing, her final year collegiately, and that's a moment that, we talked to her after the game, that's a moment that you never forget.
Do you think that your analyst do you wish that she had laid out more to allow for more time in between your call and then her analysis?
Yeah. I mean, you want more silence at the end of it, but you also remember that, she's a former Gator and she's super excited, and you can't get those, it's not like you can get it back. So, I just thought that she was super excited and into it. Yet the best case scenario, probably I'm laying out for 15, 20 seconds without saying anything. But at that point, you don't have the luxury to turn over your shoulder and mute her mic. You just, it is what it is. You go with it. And, it was a really cool moment for the Gators in the season.
You talked about things that you would change. Are you a harsh critic of yourself? What is that like for you?
Yeah, it's you terrorize yourself. I think that's part of it. It's sort of this obsessive compulsive thing that you get when you do this thing, and you want to do it at a high level. So whenever I finish a game, television or radio, I watch the whole thing back or listen maybe 2 or 3 times, and you want to go possession by possession. Television, am I telling a story? Am I taking it at a break correctly? Am I throwing it to break correctly? Am I working with my analysts enough? Radio, how's my pacing? Am I talking too much? Am I using the same descriptors? Do I have a crutch phrase that I'm using? Am I utilizing the shot clock to let people know that the shot clock is waning down? So certain things like there's a whole list of checklists that I go through that I want to make sure that I'm knocking off. Biggest things right off the bat that I'm listening to when it comes to radio is how's my pacing? Am I going too fast? And how's my description? And then you kind of branch off from there when it comes to radio stuff.
Borderline obsession, you would call it?
Yeah, but that's a healthy obsession.
No, 100%. We talked a little bit about what it's like to cover a team over the course of a full season. For you, when you have these moments like the one we're about to watch and that one with Jariah Warren, what is it like for you knowing, the relationships you have with these players, sometimes over the course of multiple years, to then have these moments and punctuate them, and they'll have those for years to come?
Yeah, you want to make sure that you come through for them. As much as you want to capture the moment for yourself and what you do and your career, and this is your baby, this is what you love. This is something that Jariah Warren or Jordan Matthews in the call that we're going to play here in a little bit, they're going to have this forever. So you want to make sure that you capitalize and you don't screw up their moment, because in the end, it is their moment. The Jordan Matthews swing that we're about to play, her mom, I think, was stuck in a parking lot or something, couldn't watch it. So she was listening to myself and Kelsey Horton, who was my analyst at the time, a former Gator. And the way that her mom consumed her daughter's game-winning to the World Series home run was through us.
Wow.
And it was the most special thing. And this was my first year here as a Gator, and it was probably to this day the craziest moment and the most epic moment I've ever had the chance to be a part of.
So let's dive right into it. It's Jordan Matthews. It's the season on the line, Super Regionals, 2 outs, 2 strikes against Texas A&M, and she hits a 3-run walk-off homer to send the Gators to OKC.
Here's the pitch. Swinging a drive towards left center field. This is deep. It's gone! She's done it! She's done it!
The Gators walk it off, and they are going to the Women's College World Series. For the 9th time in program history, and for the 5th time in 6 years, the Gators are going to OKC. Can you believe it?
And you can tell this is a very young me. I mean, that was 8 years ago. But you know, there's certain things you would want to change in it, but like that was me at that point in time in that moment. And you go back and you'll listen to stuff now when you're 10 years down the line and you're doing big league baseball or whatever the case may be, and you're just different. Your voice is different, all that. But for me, it was the emotion I remember in that booth. It was before the renovation of KDC Show Presley Stadium. So we had all these things that were stored in our booth because there wasn't a whole lot of place, and we had all these gummy snacks, which was our rally at the time. Whenever the Gators were down, everybody would eat gummy snacks. And my analyst at the time, Kelsey Horton, had a bunch of gummy snacks by her. And whenever Jordan Matthews hit that home run, there's a chair that was thrown. There were gummy snacks that were thrown in the air. I think there's a picture of, and maybe I can get it to you if you want to put it in this thing,
for sure.
if I still have it, where Kelsey Horton we took a picture of her standing there and just kind of putting her hands, because the booth was just a chaotic mess. And it was the final game before they tore down that building to create sort of what KSP is now. And that lasting memory of not just winning the game, but a freshman who had been struggling and hit that home run to send the Gators to a World Series in a epic super regional that the Gators trailed in all 3 games and probably shouldn't have won. It's a forever moment, selfishly for me, and then the added aspect that her mom was listening is just, I mean, that's awesome.
That is incredible. Now, for you, that was your first year. That was a statement call for you at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a cool moment. I don't necessarily know if I'd look at it that way, but I think more people knew I existed, I think, after that call, because it was on social media and things like that. But I had never had a chance to experience anything at this level. I've done Division II, like I said, Division III, high school. The game was televised on ESPN. There's a lot of people watching. There's a lot of people listening. Gator softball is a big deal around here. We have a really good listenership when it comes to radio here for softball. So it was really cool to be a part of something and understanding that people will hear it. It was my first sort of exposure to that, of understanding that, hey, like, after the game, because they post the clip right away, right after the game, I remember a fan coming up to the booth and saying, hey, Kyle, great call or whatever. And then went down and Tim Walton said, oh, yeah, I heard the call was great. I'm like, how do you know this? This just happened like 10 minutes ago. But that's the first time that's ever happened, that the call just, people were able to hear it and listen to it and absorb it and celebrate with it. And technically, are there things I'd change about it? Of course. But you can't look at everything that way. You just got to look at it for what it was an awesome moment for a young broadcaster who hadn't been able to experience anything like it at the time.
Sean Kelly tweeted out when they finally posted that call of the national championship, wow, I'm glad somebody posted this because I totally forgot what I said. Mm-hmm. Was that kind of the case for you with this? Were you totally absorbed and lost in the moment that you had to rewatch it in order to really get a feel for what you did say?
Yeah, there's a couple times that I have calls that I have to go and listen back and be like, oh, did I make sure I said the right thing?
Yeah.
I remember after the call, after we had gone off the air, going back to the recording area where they record it, and they had the radio call underlaid on the video, and I had the chance to listen back to it for the first time, and there was a voice crack or something in there when I said World Series, and I didn't even know that existed until I went and listened back to it. There's certain aspects of the call that you don't know what you're saying, if you got it correct, if you said the right person that hit the home run, all the basic things that you're so wrapped up in the emotion of it. Like we mentioned, you want to make sure that you control your emotions, and you learn over time. Would that call sound different now as opposed to it did 8 years ago for me, and how I maybe have a little bit my arms around the situation a little bit more? Sure. But that comes with experience. But yeah, there was a moment where I just had no idea what I said, and luckily it all came out and sort of made sense, hopefully.
What's it like for 2025 Kyle to listen to 2018 Kyle?
Oh yeah, I don't do it a whole lot. That's the first time I've heard that call in years, probably like 5 or so years. It was one I listened to a bunch pretty early on, and then it's just more about, okay, what does 2025 Kyle sound like now, and focusing on that. I don't, it's funny. It's just a different voice. It's a different pace. I think the biggest thing for young broadcasters, the hardest thing to do is to slow down. When you're calling faster sports like football and basketball, where my passion lies, I love calling football and basketball, and you tend to just try to throw as many descriptors out there as you possibly can, not understanding that the listener can only digest a certain amount. And how do you make it sound good and creative, but also digestible for the listener? You sort of remember that over time. And it's just a much slower, in command, deeper voice guy that, I hope 5-10 years from now, it's an even next step forward of what Kyle sounds like in 2025. Hopefully in 2033, it's different and better and improved.
I'm at that point as well. Like, I know what I sound like now. I like how I sound, but I am very curious to see how it's going to evolve, 5-10 years down the line. So we'll see. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
You've given me way more than I've asked for, but I do have one more question
Sure.
for you. The number one piece of advice that you either would love to give to young broadcasters, or the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
I think the one thing I would tell announcers is obsess over it. Have a healthy obsession over it, because this is a craft. Just like being a musician or an actor, it's really hard to get into this, stay into it, stay hungry, stay eager. You're going to have a couple of jobs outside a few outliers of people that sort of make that jump right out of college, where you're going to move to a place you don't necessarily love to live. It might be anywhere in the Midwest, or you're working for a small station doing high school sports. You got to embrace the journey of it all. So I think that's the biggest thing that I would tell students, is to keep at it. Continue to keep that passion when things look bleak for you. Job market is not easy, but be obsessive over it. Be obsessive over your work. Love it. Learn to live it, and you'll be successful.
Love it and learn to live it. Lasting words from Kyle Crooks. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being a part of this.
Anytime, Ethan. Thanks.
I'm Ethan Eibe. This has been Art of the Call. Stay tuned for some more episodes coming your way very soon.